What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy. Welcome back to our Bible study. So, now we're going to get into Exodus 36, which very much seems to be carrying on from the last chapter, like directly what it said before. It's like, okay, now this stuff is about to happen. So, here we go. Exodus 36. The Lord has gifted Bezalel, Aholiab, and the other skilled craftsmen with wisdom and ability to perform any task involved in building the sanctuary. Let them construct and furnish the tabernacle, just as the Lord has commanded. So Moses summoned Bezalel and Aholiab, and all the others who were specially gifted by the Lord and were eager to get to work. Moses gave them the materials donated by the people of Israel as sacred offerings for the completion of the sanctuary. But the people continued to bring additional gifts each morning. Finally, the craftsmen who were working on the sanctuary left their work. They went to Moses and reported, "The people have given more than enough materials to complete the job the Lord has commanded us to do." So Moses gave the command, and this message was sent throughout the camp. "Men and women, don't prepare any more gifts for the sanctuary. We have enough." So the people stopped bringing their sacred offerings. Their contributions were more than enough to complete the whole project. Okay, so this is, the previous chapter said that the Israelites were bringing their materials and whatnot as offerings to the Lord to help with making the tabernacle and all that, and this, I guess, just shows either that there were a lot of people who wanted to contribute, and it was just so many of them that it took so long to gather all their materials that they were trying to offer, or it might be also saying that, the people who had these things continued giving them because they had so much desire to help out with this project that they just said, "Okay, we've got more stuff here. Let's continue to give it to the Lord. Let's make sure that this tabernacle is able to be built, and let's not hold back anything until we know that it's good." So then they wound up continuing over multiple days, it seems, to give more materials, to the point where it was like, okay, the builders said that's enough. We don't need any more offerings for this purpose. I almost imagine, maybe I shouldn't, add or speculate too much on this, but I almost wonder if the craftsmen, were thinking similar to something that happened at work for me and my department recently. If you don't know, I currently work at Walmart, filling online orders and stuff like that. And Black Friday's just around the corner, basically. And Walmart's doing, multiple weeks worth of deals for that. And some of the supplies that they got, specifically for those Black Friday deals, wound up getting sort of plopped down in our nice new space that they just built for us recently. And the thing is, all this Black Friday stuff wound up taking up a lot of space in our area. And so it was kind of like, yeah, it's great that we have all this stuff and we're doing all these deals, but, could we stop bringing stuff in, please? It's too much. And all that to say, I kind of wonder if, the builders of the tabernacle were wondering something like that with the supplies that they were given from the people. It built up so much to the point where they were like, okay, we kind of don't have much space to do this now. It's getting in the way. This is too much. Can you tell the people to stop bringing more supplies, please? Anyway, that's just me adding my own thoughts and experience, wondering if maybe that's what they thought, or the builders could have just been like, yeah, this is more than enough. I mean, we've been working on this for a couple of days now and made this much progress. We're pretty sure that all this other stuff that we have here is more than enough. So I think we're good. You can tell the people to stop. It's with or without the whole, like, okay, this is a bit too much. Can we stop now? Kind of attitude. But anyway, I digress. So, let's move along here. Getting into verse 8. The skilled craftsman made 10 curtains of finely woven linen for the tabernacle. Then Bezalel decorated the curtains with blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and with skillfully embroidered cherubim. All 10 curtains were exactly the same size, 42 feet long and 6 feet wide. 5 of these curtains were joined together to make one long curtain, and the other 5 were joined to make a second long curtain. He made 50 loops of blue yarn and put them along the edge of the last curtain in each set. The 50 loops along the edge of one curtain matched the 50 loops along the edge of the other curtain. Then he made 50 gold clasps and fastened the long curtains together with the clasps. In this way, the tabernacle was made of one continuous piece. Okay, so it seems like we're kind of getting into, the details of the tabernacle, and as it was kind of laid out by God before, now it's breaking down those details again, just kind of confirming that, yes, basically down to the letter, the way that God instructed them to build this is how they built it. Okay, footnote there is just going to talk about the dimensions and how in Hebrew it gives a certain number of cubits. This is sort of just, American, I guess imperial units is the more official term. But anyway, it also gives metric system measurements in the footnote here, for those of you who might be wondering. But anyway, yeah, a lot of length measurements and stuff like that will originally say cubits, especially if it's in Hebrew. And it's just whatever's in here is kind of the best attempt at estimating for a different length unit and whatnot. Man. Footnote at Bezalel, it just says he. I mean, considering it's talking about the skilled craftsman, it makes the most sense probably that it would be Bezalel doing this. I don't know if it's really super important to note specifically who did that. The fact of the matter is, it was made as instructed. But I guess that does become important because it's starting this off saying he, which I would think is specifically in reference to Bezalel, because that was the latest name that was mentioned. So, then we get into verse 14 with he being Bezalel. So, he made 11 curtains of goat hair cloth to serve as a tent covering for the tabernacle. These 11 curtains were all exactly the same size, 45 feet long and 6 feet wide. Bezalel joined 5 of these curtains together to make one long curtain, and the other 6 were joined to make a second long curtain. He made 50 loops for the edge of each large curtain. He also made 50 bronze clasps to fasten the long curtains together. In this way, the tent covering was made of one continuous piece. He completed the tent covering with a layer of tanned ram skins and a layer of fine goatskin leather. Okay, so again, footnote is just about the measurements being in cubits. Did it say... Oh, it's 45 feet long in this case, as opposed to the 42 feet long that were, the curtains for the main part of the tabernacle. Because I guess you sort of had the inner layer that was actually I guess you'd almost compare it to, the ceiling of a house. Yeah, there's a ceiling, but there's also a roof. And so the first set of curtains would have been the ceiling, so to speak, whereas these other slightly larger ones would have been the quote-unquote roof. Basically serving as a protective layer for the actual, tabernacle covering. Because, with the materials that would have been made of, I don't think that would have been quite so weather resistant as, these ram skins and goat skin leather and other things like that. But anyway. Yeah. I guess we'll move along to verse 20. For the framework of the tabernacle, Bezalel constructed frames of acacia wood. Each frame was 15 feet high and 27 inches wide, with 2 pegs under each frame. All the frames were identical. He made 20 of these frames to support the curtains on the south side of the tabernacle. He also made 40 silver bases, 2 bases under each frame, with the pegs fitting securely into the bases. For the north side of the tabernacle, he made another 20 frames, with their 40 silver bases, 2 bases under each frame. He made 6 frames for the rear, the west side of the tabernacle, along with 2 additional frames to reinforce the rear corners of the tabernacle. These corner frames were matched at the bottom and firmly attached at the top with a single ring, forming a single corner unit. Both of these corner units were made the same way. So there were 8 frames at the rear of the tabernacle, set in 16 silver bases, 2 bases under each frame. Okay, so again, a lot of this was sort of broken down in a previous chapter with God instructing Moses to instruct the people about building the tabernacle like this. But so now at this point we've got, the sort of inner layer covering of the tabernacle. We've got the outer protective layer, and now I guess they're building sort of the support structure for it to help keep it up. Because just, cloth and leather and things like that kind of need some support to keep them upright. So, thus all these frames and bases and things like that. So then, I guess we'll get to verse 31. Then he made crossbars of acacia wood to link the frames, 5 crossbars for the north side of the tabernacle, and 5 for the south side. He also made 5 crossbars for the rear of the tabernacle, which faced west. He made the middle crossbar to attach halfway up the frames. It ran all the way from one end of the tabernacle to the other. He overlaid the frames with gold and made gold rings to hold the crossbars. Then he overlaid the crossbars with gold as well. So, sure, they were mostly made out of wood, but they were covered, essentially, it seems like. They were covered with gold to kind of make them even more solid. Because, I mean, yeah, sure, wood is fairly strong, but gold is even stronger. So, while it would be a rather ridiculous amount of gold to have all those things made of solid gold, if you have them mostly made of wood, but then put extra gold around them to reinforce them, then you have a more solid structure that then is also not just super duper ridiculous amounts of gold. Not saying that this is a small amount of gold being used for this in the least, but, still, at least it's not as ridiculous this way. Also, real quick, so the rear of the tabernacle is saying faced west, although west would be this way for all of you viewers. At least, if we were looking at a map and whatnot. So, the rear of it would have faced west, which means the entrance was east, and then, north and south. So north and south were kind of the longer sides of it, and then east and west being the shorter sides, which I guess is somewhat typical for tents, especially bigger tents. You generally have, the entry to it being on a shorter side. So, anyway, just confirming that, okay, yeah, this sort of makes sense as a way to build this. At least it seems fairly typical for, large tents as they are used today. And a lot of people at the church I go to have a bit of familiarity with large tents as of late, because the one campus, actually the main campus of the church I go to, was recently under construction, like remodeling the main building. And so while they were remodeling the sanctuary part of that, there was a big old tent outside in the back of the building that was where they held the Sunday morning services for a while. So, again, a little bit of familiarity with big tents. And yeah, the side that a lot of people entered from was definitely one of the shorter sides of that big tent. But anyway, I don't know if there's a particular significance to the fact that the entry was facing east. It's just how it was, I guess. Anyway. Okay, moving along. Verse 35, and I'll probably read through to the end now. For the inside of the tabernacle, Bezalel made a special curtain of finely woven linen. He decorated it with blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and with skillfully embroidered cherubim. For the curtain, he made 4 posts of acacia wood and 4 gold hooks. He overlaid the posts with gold and set them in 4 silver bases. Then he made another curtain for the entrance of the sacred tent. He made it of finely woven linen and embroidered it with exquisite designs using blue, purple, and scarlet thread. This curtain was hung on gold hooks attached to 5 posts. The posts with their decorated tops and hooks were overlaid with gold, and the 5 bases were cast from bronze. So I think these last 2 paragraphs here are detailing more specifically like the inner layer section area of the tabernacle, which, I mean, based on previous chapters, it really, I guess the bigger parts that were described a little bit earlier in this chapter probably would have made up like the courtyard area, I think. Unless we just haven't gotten to that yet in the reading here. But I would think that, yeah, because that's getting into other, smaller things within the tabernacle. So yeah, I think the bigger kind of interlocking curtains and stuff like that it described at first here, that was kind of the covering for like the courtyard area, or like kind of the outermost portion of all that. And then the actual like the heart, so to speak, of the tabernacle is what was detailed in these two paragraphs. And I guess so. I would assume where it says the inside of the tabernacle here, that was like what was previously referred to as the holy place and the most holy place, or something along those lines. Or this paragraph would have been the holy place, kind of the outer part of that, and then the entrance to the sacred tent here, as it says in this verse, was probably, I think, referring to the most holy place, also called the Holy of Holies, basically where, the Ark of the Covenant would have been placed. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on any of that, but I would think that's what all that means. I don't know. But definitely each one of these paragraphs refers to one of those two things. I may have just gotten a little bit mixed up on which is which. But, yeah. Anyway. I guess that's about gonna do it. So, it seems like we've gotten, the coverings and their support structures pretty much set up for the tabernacle and the courtyard. And as you might have seen, seems like next chapter is going to get into a little bit of, some of the tools and whatnot, and the objects that would be within the tabernacle. Okay, so that's going to do it for this one. I guess this chapter mostly focused on building the actual, structure of the tabernacle and all that. I mean, it took, 3 or 4 chapters to get through God's instructions on how to build the tabernacle. And now it seems like it's going to take a few chapters to get through the actual making of it. Because, I think it's just wanting to confirm that, yes, the people actually followed through on God's instructions and built it the way that God commanded. But anyway, that's going to do it for now. So, as always, like and share if you enjoyed the video, subscribe and click the bell to get updates when I post new ones, look down in the description for info on other social media pages, and leave comments down below all that with any thoughts you have. So that's it. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you for the next one. Until then, stay cool, people.